Today is the 12th of March. Spring is around the corner. I will probably stop making a lot of videos like this as I find more interesting things for people to actually look at and see, and you don't have to listen to me rant and rave about stupid things. I wanted to address something about what we are seeing the beginning of. In case you haven't paid attention, we got the beginning of a bank collapse happening again. And this is very reminiscent of what happened in 2008. And it's very reminiscent of what happened in 1929 before the Depression. It signaled the beginning of the Great Depression. And I can already tell that the Biden administration is starting to panic because they put Joe Biden on display yesterday. Think about that, on a Sunday. They gave him the best performance-enhancing drugs they could, put him in front of a microphone. What does this mean for you? Well, the Silicon Valley Bank that collapsed, and it literally collapsed within 24 hours. Now, they knew that it was going to collapse. Don't figure out for 5 minutes that they didn't know it was coming, because if you look and see the money that the bank president and so on and so forth pulled out 24 hours in advance, you'll understand it. So I'm not a guy, I'm not a banking guy, I'm not a finance guy. I'm like most of you. I just want to pay my bills and go about my life and try to keep money in the bank. I'm not worth millions of dollars. Actually, in reality, you're looking at somebody who threw away $500,000, okay? Investing in it himself. And hence I'm just driving and making videos now, which, life is life. You move on from your mistakes and your failures, and you make the best of it and enjoy the time that you have left. And I sincerely mean that. So what does this mean for the average person? Well, if you have $200,000 or less in any bank in the country, you don't have to worry. The federal government has to pay you that money back. Okay. But let's say that you have invested well over $200,000 in, let's say, Roku, TV streaming service, right? With Roku we have in our home. Well, Roku was invested, had millions and millions and millions of dollars invested in this Silicon Valley Bank. Well, 90% of that bank, Silicon Valley Bank's 90% of their customers were people like Roku that worth millions and millions of dollars that they just lost. They aren't getting their money back from the federal government. As a matter of fact, if you go and watch Joe Biden's little press junket the other day, he said the investors are not getting any of their money back. That's the cost of that's the risk of investing. Well, here is the bad part about it. So somebody like me who uses Roku as a service, that's going to affect you, because they're going to try to make up that money some way or another. They're going to hit their customers to try to make that money that they lost back. So it does affect you on some level. So if you go and see who these 90% of companies that were invested with this company, go and see how you're connected to them. And see, because that's going to trickle down to you. There's not much you can do about that outside of get rid of their service. Look, the truth is, you and I, we could all live a lot simpler lives. The thing is, are you willing to deal with that? Are you willing to turn the TV off and walk away from it? We at this point, I think we're so dependent on the internet because we do so much business on it. We're so dependent on emails and dependent on our phones that we can't go back to living like it was, 1989, which was, man, a much better time. It really was. But I want to put this in perspective, because there were people that had bank accounts, little guys like you and I, that were running to Silicon Valley Bank to get their money out the other day, and they had the bank closed. Well, the bank's open now, and they could take their money out. But these are people like you and I with just a simple bank account under $200,000. Now, mind you, I don't have $200,000 in the bank, but legally, when they get on TV and start telling you, oh, you're okay, that we have safeguards in place, that's all that means. All that means is just a regular guy that has less than that amount of money, they're protected. But if the economy collapses and the money is worthless anyway, it ain't gonna matter. So here's the thing. Well, this is just me as a regular person talking. If I was worth a lot of money, and I had, let's say I was worth, a couple $1 million. In order to protect, and this is just how I think. If I wanted to keep that money in the bank, I would just divide those millions of dollars up into increments that were $200,000 and put them in separate banks in case those banks all failed. I would at least get that money back. You understand what I'm saying? If I was worth that much, I wouldn't invest it all into all of this other thing. Now, people that have tons and tons of money, they'll always find a way, since they're good with money, they'll always find a way they may take a loss, but they'll find a way to make it back. If you're just like a regular person like me, living paycheck to paycheck, you're just trying to, keep your standard of living from getting worse, right? I mean, aren't you? I mean, it's bad enough when inflation hits you and your grocery bill has gone double. I just give you an example of this, man. I mean, a 50-pound bag of chicken feed for me used to be, I could find it for about $8.95. Anywhere from $8.95 to about $10.95. At the most, it would be $12. Well, that ain't the case anymore. So now it's about $15. So if I was finding it at one time for $8, the price of it is doubled, and that's just within the last year. So across the board, any kind of product that involves chickens, whether it's eggs, or whether you're eating chicken, or whether it's their feed, or whether it's animal feed, like dog or cat food that has chicken byproducts in it, it's going to affect the price. And like I said, I'm not a financial guy. I'm not my whole financial life has been relegated around a very simple principle. Don't spend more money than you make. If you live by that simple principle, you should be okay, but a lot of people don't. But we live in complicated times, and then let's not even put into having financial emergencies, which I am well acquainted with and still dealing with to this day. So when you watch these stories now, another bank has failed over the weekend called Signature Bank, and I don't know much about that. I haven't looked into it. I don't absorb myself into this, but I'm going to leave you with this really simple thing. This Silicon Valley Bank was a woke bank. They had a whole program revolving around equity, diversity, and greenery, where they were investing in projects because they were going with this whole global economic forum thing to invest in green projects to save the planet. Well, you have stockholders, and the stockholders want a return on their money. There's nothing wrong with this. I mean, if you have a 401k, you want a return. You want that to be invested properly. Stay away from the green bullshit, because this is what's going to happen. Your woke stuff is going to go broke because you're not going to get a return on this. You think you're saving the planet, and you get these woke people in charge of these banks are going to fail. I promise you. I promise you this. If you have your money invested in a large bank that's a woke bank, a World Economic Forum bank, you're going to lose your money. Get it out and go to a small bank who's going to be a lot more choosy on who they give loans to. Go to a small bank who have a lot to lose, not some big bank that thinks they're too big to lose. You remember that term? That's what happened in 2008. They're too big to lose. Don't believe that nonsense. This stuff's going to come crashing down. Find a small bank Find out what they're investing in. If they're investing in this equity, woke, environmental, climate crisis nonsense, you're gonna lose. So take your money to those banks. They will survive. Small banks are going to survive. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but you know what? Find a minority-owned bank. Find a bank that's owned by Hispanics or blacks, and because they are going to be a lot more careful with how they invest their customers' money. Because if their customers are predominantly minority, they're going to be really, really careful about how they invest their money. They're not going to take unusual risks. And I'm telling people right now, the people that are going to save this nation are not the woke leftist morons. They aren't. It's going to be the black and brown people, and you wait and see. In a sense, it's going to be these illegals, because they don't want this stuff. They want to have a successful life, and they're running from the bullshit that they came from. It's going to be people who are going to be very cautious about where their money goes and how it's used. And you can say what you want about these communities, all right? You get a successful black person, and I know quite a few of them that and they don't embrace the woke crap. They don't, and they're successful. They're successful because they, at the very least, they embrace the conservative values of money and how to manage it and what to do with it properly. And they're going to put their money in some place where it's going to get them a good return. So, and I'm not blowing smoke up your butts with this. This is legitimate stuff here. And look, who am I? I'm nobody. I'm just a little guy, man. I am just an average dude trying to make a living like the rest of you. You know, I'm no more special. I'm no more. There's nothing in my life that makes me unique amongst human beings. I'm just telling you. And my closest friends will tell you this. My closest family member, the family that's close to me, they will tell you this. And what I'm saying, I'm not telling people what to do. I'm just trying to give you just a regular, you're a perspective, just an everyday person's perspective on these things. I don't know crap about international banking cartels and all this stuff. I mean, I could do a little bit of a dive into it, but man, I'm not going to waste your time with this. My advice is just simple. Don't panic. If you don't have billions of dollars and millions of dollars invested in this stuff, don't worry about it. Because the truth is, if the banking system collapses and you only have $8,000 to $10,000 in the bank, even if you have that, and everything goes to crap, your money ain't going to be worth anything anyhow. And we're going to have to figure out a way how to survive until this nonsense is thrown out the door and reality comes back to humanity. And I'm going to issue this warning. I do believe something is coming. And I'm going to add, I do believe something big is coming. And I think we're going to be in for some really dark days. And I've mentioned this before. I don't think it's not like it's going to go on for a decade. But we may have a year or two that's going to be extremely challenging. And I'm hoping that what's going to happen on the other side of this is we're going to have a destruction of the system that has been keeping us kind of enslaved for a long time, and what's going to come out of it is going to be much better. And it isn't going to be communist on the other end of the spectrum. It's not going to be woke. And hopefully, when all the dust clears of this, the woke stuff is going to be gone, and these people are going to be relegated to the trash heap, into the trash heap of a history bit. Hopefully, because that's what needs to happen. So I hope this was of value to you. I haven't even figured out how I'm going to entitle this, but I want to thank anybody who listened to this, and to me, spitting off for about 15 minutes. Till next time.